Breaking from Chicago, sources report a major internal divide as the head coach pushes for a foundational roster reset. Despite recent success, the organization faces a pivotal shift. I will break down the implications for current veterans. Subscribe and like for the latest updates.
Reporting directly on the developing situation in Chicago, sources close to the organization are describing a significant philosophical divergence emerging from Halas Hall involving head coach Ben Johnson. The headline here is that Johnson has sparked an intense internal debate regarding the future construction of this roster, specifically introducing the concept of starting from scratch in key areas. This comes as a massive surprise to many around the league, considering the Bears are coming off a season characterized by playoff football and tangible on-field success. The expectation was that Chicago would be entering an optimization phase, tweaking the margins to make a Super Bowl run. Instead, Johnson is reportedly advocating for a more foundational reset to align the personnel strictly with his long-term vision. To understand the weight of this news, we have to look at the context of the Bears' current trajectory. The front office has spent the last 2 cycles acquiring blue-chip talent and spending significant capital to build a competitive window that appeared to be wide open right now. However, insider reports suggest that Johnson believes the current roster architecture, while good enough for a wildcard berth, may have a capped ceiling that prevents true championship contention. We are seeing a classic friction point between a head coach who wants to install his specific culture and schematic DNA from the ground up versus an organizational momentum that demands winning immediately. Johnson's perspective is seemingly that the good is the enemy of the great, and that retaining certain veterans or schemes simply because they worked last year might be a trap. This is not just a casual conversation. These are high-stakes strategy meetings that will dictate the franchise's moves in free agency and the draft. The data from last season showed a team on the rise, but Johnson's assessment implies that the underlying metrics might not be as sustainable as the win-loss record suggests. He is looking for specific traits, speed, processing ability, and positional versatility that the current depth chart may lack in his eyes. The question now dominating the hallways at Halas Hall is whether the organization has the stomach to tear down parts of a winning machine to chase Johnson's theoretical ideal.
Analyzing the implications of Ben Johnson's stance, the ripple effects on the roster could be drastic and immediate. If the Bears commit to this start-from-scratch philosophy, we should expect a very active and potentially controversial trade market involving Chicago. Veteran players who were instrumental in the recent playoff run, specifically those with high salary cap figures who do not perfectly fit Johnson's offensive or defensive prototypes, could find themselves on the trading block. This approach signals that the Bears might be willing to sacrifice short-term stability in the 2024 season to secure a higher, more sustainable ceiling for the next 5 years. It is a calculated risk that prioritizes the system over individual talent, a move that requires immense trust between the general manager and the head coach. From a locker room dynamic perspective, this is an incredibly delicate situation. When you tell a group of professional athletes who just tasted postseason success that the team needs a reset, you risk alienating the leadership core. Johnson is walking a tightrope here. He must convince the locker room that this reconstruction is necessary for a championship rather than an unnecessary step backward. If the players buy in, it creates a unified culture. If they don't, it creates a fractured environment. The verdict on this move ultimately hinges on execution. If Johnson dismantles a playoff-caliber roster and the team regresses, the scrutiny will be unforgiving. However, if he identifies the correct assets to move and successfully reloads with younger, scheme-specific talent, this could be the pivot point that turns the Bears into a dynasty rather than a one-hit wonder. My read on the situation is that the Bears are at a defining crossroads. The decisions made in the next few weeks regarding roster retention versus asset accumulation will reveal the true power structure within the organization. We are witnessing a bold gamble on coaching vision over roster continuity. I want to know where you stand on this. Do you trust Ben Johnson's instinct to rebuild, or is this a mistake to mess with a winning formula? Let me know in the comments below. And for the most reliable, up-to-the-minute updates on every roster move in Chicago, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now.